Hello, my name is Eric Kolb. I'm coming out with my second book of the first book of a four-book series, but my second book. My first book was The Psychology of God, and it was during that book I wrote a chapter on the heart, body, mind, and soul. And one chapter was not enough to cover all this material, so this is a four-book series on the heart, body, mind, and soul. And today we will be reviewing The Mind. The book that I wrote covers this circle, the mind. And this is a diagram that came about during the research and the writing of these books. I'm already working on the soul. My dissertation was on the heart, and from the body, that book will be more taking from my own personal experience of living with disability. So, the mind. My book on the human mind, like I said, covers this circle, but I deal a lot with this area. I get into the A and B as well, and much of the soul. Let's just go through the chapters. Chapter 1 is belief, the lens of reality. What that means is we see reality through what we believe. As humans are born with an intuition mode of thought is there long before the rational mode of thought develops. So through our childhood development, we build core beliefs, and after that basis is set, then everything we perceive through our senses is filtered through that belief. And that is how we perceive our reality, which is not always the true reality. That's, big problem. That's why we have psychology when people have problems, perceiving reality as it truly is. And it's not because there's a problem with the eyes that don't see or the ears that don't hear, but people want to hear and see things that confirm their beliefs, their core beliefs. And all of this happens non-consciously. So belief is something that happens primarily in this section here, not in the A and the B, but definitely has a great influence over our soul, of course, from both a theological and scientific standpoint. So, chapter 2 is the blank slate. The blank slate is a term, very old term, that refers to when a baby is born. It has no experience, no memories, but nothing. What it has are built directly into the DNA. So we would be in this area here when we're talking about DNA and how it influences our behavior. And humans are built with drives, instincts, and reflexes, to which also emotions would belong. So now we're a little bit in the A there as well. So the blank slate is not blank. The blank slate chapter was a lot of fun. The blank slate is essentially comparable to a new iPhone. Okay, I open it up, charge it, turn it on, and it works. It turns on. There's no, there's no contacts in there. There's no um, pictures, no telephone numbers, no nothing. I have not put anything into the phone yet, but the phone is still not empty. It has all the programs there necessary to receive what I want to put in to build the telephone in the direction for which I want to use it. And so is also the blank slate. There are programs there that regulate our drives, instincts, and reflexes. With a blank slate, there is a rather large debate. The question is it our upbringing, our environment that creates us to be good citizens? Or is that in our DNA we are going to become the kind of person we are going to become despite any outer influence because it's already in our DNA? Intuition would say no, the environment is the greater influence, but actually data supports that the DNA is the greater influence. But even if it is, that doesn't really matter because we have no influence over the DNA. The blank slate. Yeah, so that would be this area here. This driving that when the perception comes in. Then we have objective and subjective self-awareness. Okay, when we are born, in the same manner that we're born with the intuitive mode of thinking and not the rational mode of thinking, we're also born with a subjective self-awareness rather than a objective self-awareness. The difference being when a baby is laying there 3 days old and sees these faces, hands, not even knowing they're his own hands, from his perspective, the baby's perspective, he is the center of the universe. Everything going around is about him. And for the most part, because of the mother carrying, that's a accurate assumption, intuitively. So we are born in this mode of awareness, in subjective awareness. You know, children, me, 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 me. This is why we have problems. Why, you know, this present bigger than the neighbor, or whatever. We all have to work through that. There's nothing we can do about that. When the theory of mind develops, and that will be the next chapter, objective self-awareness kicks in. And that's when we see ourselves not as the center of the universe, but just one object in it bouncing around without control. We're just trying not to get hit. You see yourself just as an object in the world, you know, a billiard ball on the table just getting smacked around. You know, you can live that way. You can think, oh, I don't have any control. Anyway, I just go with it. Not one mode of awareness is better than the other. We need them both. We need them both depending on the situation. For example, when you're driving on the highway, you need to be in the objective mode of self-awareness because you only have limited control over your own cars. You have no control over any of the cars around you buzzing by. So you have to, well, it's better if you see yourself as just one object out of the many around you and you try not to get hit. But if you are not in this mode of thought and you're thinking about what's going on in your life, and that day you're maybe upset about something, or you're on the phone, or you're doing you, then you don't see someone slam on the brakes in front of you, and we hear about you on the news. I don't believe I just said that. Okay, moving on. Theory of mind. So, at around the age of 4, a child will develop a theory of mind. This is a very interesting thing. When they test this with children, there's different kinds of tests. In the book, I describe exactly how to, if you want to test your child to see if you have a theory of mind, you can do that. You won't harm them. It's just a playful thing. What it really means, to have a theory of mind, means that the child then realizes, oh, all these thoughts, whatever's in my mind, is only in my mind and not in the minds of others. You know, the beginning stages where the mother is just jumping and fulfilling needs and wants of the baby, and the whole family is doing this, and the child's just getting taken care of. It's easy to think that it's hard to get out of the subjective awareness, but at some point, it's not so cute anymore when the child says, "Oh, thank you for this delicious meal, Mom," and throws it on the floor, and that's how the child begins to communicate to us that they're done eating. When they're 1, we think, "Ooh, isn't that cute?" And when they're 3, not so cute anymore. So a transition happens there around the terrible 2s, which is really a thing from a developmental standpoint that will be coming in later in body. Where was I? Oh, theory of mind. Okay, so theory of mind is when a child then realizes that his wants and desires, thoughts, ideas are exclusively his. When that happens, a lot happens at that point. Actually, not in the book. Maybe it should be in the book. As far as memories go, I should have put that in the book. That our earliest childhood's memories begin also around that age, and perhaps then begin when we develop a theory of mind, and suddenly develop a theory of mind. It's very, very interesting. To test if a child has theory of mind, you can play Barbie dolls. And we have a Barbie doll house here, and I play Barbie. I play Lacey. The child plays Barbie. And then she points out, "Oh, look here, I have a treasure, a marshmallow. I hide it here under the bed so Ken can't find it." And then puts it back under the bed. Says, "Oh, we have to go to soccer practice, football practice, whatever." And then they go away. And then I take the Barbie dolls and put them aside. I said, now me speaking to the child, and I said, "Watch this. I'm going to play a trick on Lacey. I'm going to take the marshmallow here from under the bed and put it under the blanket so it looks like the pillow, and she won't know." So then we do something else, a little bit of a distraction. Sometimes do a magic trick or something really, doesn't have to be long. Just then we go back to the Barbie dollhouse. This time I play Barbie, and the child plays Lacey. And then I say, okay, Barbie, oh, and I come back, and first I'm just Barbie saying, oh, that was a good practice, you're getting really good, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes right away they come back and say, oh, and go to the pillow, who put my marshmallow there, or whatever. And then we know they do not have a theory of mind because the child knows that the marshmallow is there, but Lacey, the character she's playing, cannot know. So that's one way theory of mind can be tested. There's many such little and different combinations of the knowing and what's happening. They're all very interesting. Um, but when children are tested on this, it happens that either a child gets them all right or gets them all wrong. There's not, you know, there's not too many so in the middle, which is for an aptitude test really unheard of. Usually you have the arc, so half the people get half of them right and half of them wrong. So in the middle. But here it's just two. But in these tests, it seems theory of mind, you either have it or you don't. Chapter 5, Identity. Identity is here in the mind when we talk about who we are. When we talk about who we want to become, we're talking about the identity of the soul. So through identity, there is a strong connection between the mind and the soul. And that will be the topic of the book I am writing now. But for this book, I'm talking about the identity of who we are and the development process involved in that, which is quite complex. Chapter 6, the relational mind. That should have come earlier in the book because it talks about how the mind in general works. We perceive in relation. There is a very, very interesting discovery was made a long time ago. I discuss it in the book, that we can recognize a melody in any key. And that illustrates it's the relationship between the notes that define something and not the note itself. And this became a principle of what we now call Gestalt psychology or Gestalt school of thought. Chapter 7, Consciousness. Yeah, well, while I finished the book on the human mind, sent it to the publishers, then there were problems due to COVID. And so I started working on the human soul and found that particularly in the area of study of consciousness, the soul and the mind will be the definitions interchanged. And in my opinion, consciousness belongs up here to the mind and is, of course, relevant to the soul, but I distinctly distinguish between the soul and the mind. In research, attributes of the mind are often listed as attributes of the soul, and consciousness is very often one of these things. Chapter 8, Development of Mind and Behavior. This is a very interesting thing. And now we're talking about this area, the mind-body problem. Science knows quite much about this. This is more or less the limbic system, but this area here is a huge mystery. This is the famous mind-body problem. it is with our minds that we control our behavior. For instance, now I'm trying to explain something, so I'm talking, but I am not conscious of what's going on with my tongue and my lips and my breathing. Um, now that I say it, I become conscious of it. But these things happen automatically. Here, what my hand's doing, I just saw that in the display. The impulses come from the mind and somehow activate the neurons in the brain. So there, what we know is two things. The mind does control behavior, and secondly, at some point, something must get neurons to fire. Something that's immaterial must activate something material. That's called the mind-body problem. Lots of theories about that, and they will be in this book as well as the next book also. So the question is, how does this happen? Now, these are not only scientific books, they're also theology books. And I make a great effort not to fall into a God of the gaps mode of thinking. Here is a gap, but is God the answer to the question? Is God doing something here? Is this something? And I would say, of course, yes, because God's done something in all of these. You know, that's my core belief. And so that's what forms my reality, going back to the first chapters of the book. You know, we choose to believe what we want to, and then look for evidence that justifies that belief. And everyone does that, so I'm doing that too. And that's why I do not assume that there is no God like most scientists do. I understand why that needs to be done. I understand that when you're testing the effectivity of a vaccine, we want to test the effectivity of the vaccine and not the power of prayer that the person who's taking the vaccine has on their own health. I believe there is a factor there. Essentially, we know there's studies over that, but that's not the focus of the study for the effectiveness of the vaccine. So you cannot assume that there are any outside influences, a closed system. And if there is a God, then there's not a closed system. So science has to assume that there is no God because they have to have a closed system for their thought processes. So I was really surprised about how much scientific literature exists on the soul. Now, that's greatly due to the fact that I said before, many attributes of the mind are lent to the soul, particularly in the area of identity and identity continuality. I should have mentioned that. Well, it's essentially what my next book is going to be about. It'll be a very central theme. Who we are today is not the same person we were 25 years ago, and certainly not the same person on our day of conception. But there is still, nevertheless, a continuality of the person that I am today, Eric J. Cope. At one point, not yet born, the living organism, and whether you call it a baby, fetus, or whatever, it's a living organism. It's alive, and it's going to become a person. And that person uh, it became is me. And it was me then and it's me now, but it's a completely different person. It's a grown adult. None of the body molecules are the same. The body is completely changed. I didn't have uh, the blank. If I had a mind, it was only a blank slate, nothing on it yet, no experiences, which is a very important part of the soul, and until the limbic system, when the limbic system is developed, then it's there. The final chapter of the book, um, I examine the mind of Jesus Christ. As a psychologist, my main interest was child development and behavior, I I decided to take a psychological perspective of what I know of Jesus's upbringing. In the Bible, there is only one story of his upbringing. In other religious documents, there are other stories. I've read those as well, also very interesting. But for this book, one example was enough for this situation. Goes with the question: Jesus Christ, human or God, or both, and if so, how? And I say both. Both because he had 46 chromosomes. He was human. He was a human being. He went through the same developmental processes as we did with a blank slate, and otherwise he wouldn't be human. So he has to go the same way. So how does that happen? Well, 23 other chromosomes from the Holy Spirit is the theological answer to that. If you don't want to go that way, what we do know, 46 chromosomes came together and a child named Jesus of Nazareth was born. He had a genetic code, a human genetic code, and on that genetic code was his blank slate, and programmed in the blank slate, as in all of us, was the person he was going to be. Just as was programmed in your blank slate, the person you are now, and programmed in mine. The only difference is, if we accredit God now to the creation of all this, whereas we were created to become the persons God, we were born to become the persons God created us to be. Jesus was born to become the person he had always been. And that was in his blank slate, programmed in his DNA, just as it is in ours. So he went through child development and at some point developed a theory of mind and rational thought and objective self-awareness and studied the scriptures. We know that. And at some point, while reading, we know that he knew that he was going to die, crucified. We knew he was going to die before he died. He mentioned that, I think, 3 times before it happened. So the question is, when did Jesus come to the realization, I'm the Messiah? While he's reading the scriptures of old, reading Isaiah 53, and comes to the realization that he is this Messiah. It is by his stripes we will be healed, or we are healed. And then I imagine a 12-year-old Jesus reading, so my stripes? Wait, stripes? What do you mean by stripes? So he needs to talk to the priests. And uh, I can understand this may not be something he asked permission from his parents because, what's he going to do? Hey, mom, you told me about all the funny things. That's another thing. In his birth, he was um, brought up. He was a king. I mean, a lot of crazy things happened, and his mom's going to have told him these stories. Mary and Joseph are busy. Jesus is the oldest. The boy's working as a carpenter. His father's a carpenter, and he's reading a lot. He's not a very. Um, I mean, the childhood he's grown up in. Um, he's driven. Certainly an achiever kind of child, and probably doesn't have a lot of time for friends. And that's where I also speculated. So John the Baptist, his um, his role it was to prepare a way for Jesus, and they were born about the same time. Their mothers were at least friends, maybe cousins. I didn't look into the gene. They knew each other. Um, and I wonder if John the Baptist, who, like Jesus, was born with the Holy Spirit from the beginning, says that specifically, um, if he wasn't maybe there to be by Jesus' side, because imagine you're 12 years old, you do all this work, you're in this family, you're the oldest son, your birth was like a big deal, but now, that's kind of forgotten. And suddenly you learn you're the Messiah and it all clicks and it's true. You feel it. And so he goes to the priests and he's talking to them. The Bible says they were very impressed about his knowledge of the scriptures, and the reason why they were so, he wasn't talking about he was talking about his own, it was him. He was talking about himself, and he then realized he was, well, I don't know, that's the speculation, but I kind of think possibly it would fit that Jesus then, that was the moment that he realized that he was this Messiah, and he slipped away to talk to someone about it because, you know, this is all speculation. I wrote it in a funny little story. I hope you like it. I hope you. That's my book, um, coming out soon.